Hello and welcome to Ungodly, the magical Grimoire. This is a special episode. I'm Besh. This is Avery.
And I'm Mesh.
And we're sitting in a cemetery right now. It's nice to be here with you, and we're going to share some spooky tales today.
Indeed. And I wanted to sort of try and break away a little bit from the typical Halloween tradition of going strictly for ghost stories. So I'm going with some equally messed up shit that is not necessarily ghost stories.
Cool. So just to have a shout out, we're in the Central Edmonton Cemetery, which was established in 1886 as a resting place for pioneers of Edmonton. Of course, it's large, so there's a lot of other people and families and names that we would recognize. There's probably, some McKernans in here, etc. Oh, yes. Big name in Edmonton. So lots of founding fathers, if you will. And actually, of the famous five, which was originally known as the Alberta Five, Emily Murphy, who was a Canadian suffragette type, I'll call her a suffragette, she is here at the mausoleum, and she helped get the votes for women here in Canada.
Yeah, which is an excellent cause.
Yeah, and it's just really cool. I didn't even know she was buried here.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how she seems to just keep coming up, right?
Yes, and actually, her house is here, I think on the south side, and she's been seen from her window looking down at the women students at U of A, University of Alberta, and kind of in an approving way, cheering them on. So that's really cool. And people who work at the house say that the tea kettle goes on. She was always serving tea. So
awesome, very cool. Just for the listeners, we're obviously going for a bit more of a free-form recording on this one, so bear with us, but It'll be fun.
So I found this interesting article on CNN. It's from 2011, so 10 years ago, and it's really well written and researched, and it's called "Do Loved Ones Bid Farewell from Beyond the Grave" by John Blake. And it starts off with this story about this woman, Nina DeSanto. And she was working one night, and she was about to close her hair salon. And then her friend Michael shows up at the door. And she was a customer of his, and they had gotten very close. I guess he was going through a hard time. Anyway, he came to thank her for being there for him. And I imagine she was very touched. And then she comes to find out in the morning that he had passed away, I think 9 hours earlier. So she had a whole conversation with him, and he had already died. Yeah, and she has a quote. She says, "It was very bizarre. I went through a period of disbelief. How can you tell someone that you saw this man, solid as ever, walk in and talk to you, but he's dead?" I would also question her, but...
Well, yeah, and I mean, it makes you question yourself, too, when you have experiences like that, right? You start to wonder about your mental health. Am I resting enough? Do I need more sleep and water? Like, what's going on here?
Right. So they have a name for this, and it's called a crisis apparition. So whether it's like something like the person can sense something went awful, just, through natural senses, so therefore they like conjure up a person, or it's something telepathic, maybe, like they sensed that they were dying through the other person's thoughts. But I don't know, that seems very concrete. Seeing somebody at your door and having a full conversation with them.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some paranormal experiences, but I don't think any of them just seemed like it was a straight up normal person to me.
Right. Yeah. And it's weird because she said she only thought it was weird when she thought about it a bit later on and said to herself, he was looking like gray, lacking color.
Well, I mean, at the end of the shift and at night, maybe not thinking so clearly, not seeing so clearly, and then
you just take it for what it is.
Yeah.
Even though something's a bit off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like that one. Also, on Jim Harold's podcast, etc., I love the stories where somebody gets a call from the deceased or a text, because spirits apparently can manipulate technology pretty easily. So
it makes sense if you follow like electromagnetic field theory and the idea of like the plasmic soul.
Yeah. And I don't know, I have a hard time wrapping my head around this, but people also say that they can manipulate metal really easily, and that's why I'm not sure what I think about that. I think if you're finding pennies from a loved one, it's more of a thing like how we were talking about with animals. It's more like from beyond, you kind of have to arrange for that penny to get there somehow through means of talking to people, their higher ups above, sort of a thing, their higher selves,
also
and arranging
a feasible and accessible symbol. Like for you, like we were talking about, if you were to be a magpie, well, of course, there's lots of magpies around here, so that's a feasible, accessible symbol.
Yeah.
Right. If you were to say, well, I'll come back to you, but in the form of a phoenix, I'd be like, shit, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. Unless, you saw a lot of pictures and stuff somehow with timing.
I'd start getting a bunch of postcards for Phoenix, Arizona and shit like that.
So just while we're on this article, so this other woman, Seema Lieberman, she, about 40 years ago, she got a call from her boyfriend, Johnny, who had unfortunately passed away, and she quotes him as saying, "I just wanted you to know that I love you and I'll never be mean to anybody again," which when I read that gave me chills. But apparently he was murdered, which is just so tragic and sad, but it was definitely him, and he was saying goodbye. Johnny was shot in the head as he sat in a car, and
it makes you wonder what conversation led up to that. If he's communicating, "Oh, I'll never be mean again," like what did you say to the other person? Got them so riled up that they decided to shoot you in the head, and then you apologize for it after.
Right. And she did note that the call was like super static. And so like all this time she's been like, did he by chance like call just before he was murdered? Like what happened? But then years later she actually read an article about staticky calls and people who claim to have received calls beyond the grave. So that kind of put it into context for her.
Yeah, there seems to be kind of a running theme of like heavy static and sort of sounding distant or echoey.
Yeah. My mom has a really cool story about, I believe, when her dad and her, I want to say uncle and his wife, were on a plane and it actually crashed. And this is not how my grandpa passed away, fortunately. But she received some sort of, I guess, signal from them. She woke up and there were these staticky, kind of how TVs get static, images in front of her, but they were the exact shapes of her family members.
Oh, wow.
And there's more to the story, so I actually want to get her on to tell it sometime. It's a very cool story. Yeah. And that kind of ties into this last one in this article. I love kind of creepy childhood stories.
We will come back to your final story at the end, and we'll just quickly interject with some stories from elsewhere, and also not so far. Going back in time a little bit, because I've been really interested in Yoruba and in voodoo, and reading up on on those subjects a lot, so I found this pretty interesting. It helps to partially explain why voodoo gets such a bad rap, especially with the Europeans, and how Haiti was basically just shat on through the 19th and 20th centuries, especially. Yeah. Anyhow, the event that I'm talking about is called Fer De Beselton. Happened in 1864. And a lot of what I've learned about this came from an article by Mike Dash for Smithsonian Magazine. So Beselton is a small place just west of Port-au-Prince, where a fellow named Congo Pele and 7 other people, it was 4 men and 4 women, were publicly executed in a very clumsy and brutal way. It was really like quite the fandangle. So the person who had just recently come into office in Haiti, he was taking his name is Faber Geffrard, and he had ordered the public executions in a sort of reactionary anti-voodoo, anti-magic crackdown. He was trying to be hyper-rationalist and modernize Haiti and try and prove, like, no, we can be, in times with the scientific world too. That sort of a notion. But part of the reason for that was because his predecessor, Faustin Soulouque, he had ruled very poorly under a cardboard crown.
What?
Yeah.
Literally?
Literally. He couldn't get a gold crown for a number of different reasons. So for his coronation, he had a cardboard crown. And this and many other things kind of made Haiti a bit of a laughing stock on the international scene. And people just weren't taking it seriously, and it made it very difficult for people to take voodoo seriously as well, because he espoused himself as being a very adamant practitioner, believer in voodoo, but did silly things with it because he was a very uneducated and unscrupulous man. So yeah, Geffrard, sorry, I don't know. He took a very staunch stance against anything supernatural and wanted to Christianize and rationalize. That was the idea. So this Congo Pele person, he was of relatively low social stature, and his brother was doing all right for himself. So the theory is that he was just kind of a little jealous that his brother's hard work was paying off, and this guy seemed a little bit lazy and figured that he could just, have gods and spirits provide for him. And so he did some consultation. His sister, Jeanne, she was a high priestess of voodoo, and so he consulted with her and 2 other priests to find out what needed to be done. And at least 2 out of the 3 recommended that he sacrificed the goat without horns, which is meant to imply human sacrifice.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And so he started plotting with them.
Goat, that's me. Greatest of all time.
That's right.
Or silly goat, as you like to call me.
Yes.
Sorry.
All good. So he started plotting and scheming with them, and a few other people. And I don't know how they arrived at this particular decision, but Jeanne and Congo decided that they were going to take their sister's child, so their niece, who's it's written. Local reports said that she was about 7 or 8, and then Mr. Whiteman, St. John, decided that she was 12. Her name was Claircine. What they did is they abducted her, and they bound her and gagged her.
Oh no!
And they hid her under an altar at the temple for 4 days and 4 nights.
Oh no!
All tied up like that.
Did they give her water?
I assume not. Supposedly one of the eyewitness accounts from this was another child that was also bound under the same altar and intended to be a secondary sacrifice. So that's worth noting. But what ended up happening to her, and trigger warning if you've got a weak stomach, this is probably a good time to, I don't know, do something else. They ended up strangling, flaying, decapitating, dismembering, and cooking. Oh, and they also exsanguinated her body into a jar, so like all of her blood was kept for later.
Of course.
But yeah, and then she was dismembered and cooked and consumed. So obviously there were heavy charges pressed against these people, and so hence the execution. And then the execution ended up being that they had 5 executioners for every one person, and somehow, because they were all untrained, they all fired with such an accuracy that only 6 of the 8 individuals being executed even fell from being wounded on the first shot. And it apparently ended up taking the executioners roughly about half an hour to finish their job.
Oh no.
And at one point, one of the eyewitnesses who is implicated in it through tortured confession. That's how they got most of their information about this trial, was through tortured confession. At one point, she even grabbed the musket and pressed it against her bosom and just like kept calling on the man, like, pull the fucking trigger already. Like, if you're gonna do it. That's how long and drawn out this process was. So, yet again, kind of like we were talking about with the Salem witch trials, people being all horrified at gruesome violence, and then saying, well, the only thing for that is gruesome violence. It's interesting how often that plays out, eh?
And on young girls.
Yeah. It's quite sick. And the way that this was written about and publicized, it took the world by storm at the time. And yeah, it really cast...
Sorry, what year?
1864.
That's... not that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
No. I mean, that's not too long before Haiti fought for and earned their independence. Which,
are you freezing? I just got so cold.
Okay, I will quickly wrap up with one more food story.
No, it's okay. I just find it interesting because it should be getting warmer here.
It should, as the sun rises.
Oh.
So this one is much closer to our home and much closer to our time.
Ooh.
January 2018.
Oh no.
Yeah. And go figure, Massachusetts.
Hey!
So in this place called East Bridgewater, Massachusetts, these 2 women named Peggy and Rachel, at the behest of the mother of the girl, performed a ritual cleansing on a 5-year-old girl and her 8-year-old brother as well. That sounds like a nice thing, but this is a process that went on for days and left this girl permanently disfigured.
Oh no.
They would cover her in oils and caustic chemicals, and then they would use a flaming stick and blow the flames on her face.
What?
And she'd be tied up or held down by one of these 2 adults and her mother. And all of this was to try and banish a demon that was causing quote-unquote misbehavior in her. Like, she's a 5-year-old girl misbehaving.
Oh, that is so silly and sad.
Yeah. And they used stress positions, like tying her in a crucifix position and leaving her there for hours until her mom would come home from work. It was absolutely horrible, just horrific. And they also threatened to behead the brother with a machete. And apparently, at one point, one of the older women, keep in mind, this is a 51-year-old and a 40-year-old woman doing this stuff to this 5-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. At one point, she was rubbing him down in an oil bath in the nude and telling him that he wanted to have sex with girls, which is like...
These are sick people.
Yeah.
Abusive.
Yeah, exactly. And now again, this is just a modern iteration of, I think anyway, people misusing the name voodoo. The mother claimed that she sought this help, quote unquote help, because she was of Haitian descent and believed in voodoo, which, fine, go ahead, believe and act in your practices, but don't just believe anybody who says, oh, I am a fucking voodoo witch and I can do this. I'm a strong practitioner, I will take care of this for you. I don't think that any legitimate priest or priestess of voodoo or whatever sort of bruja, I don't think that that's the way that they would go about things.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be in accord with anything that I understand about voodoo. And I've been looking into this for a long time. I've spoken to people who have practiced it. That's not right. That's not how it works. This is just a problem of psychosis and religion having a dotted line between them sometimes.
Yeah.
And again, it's a shame because it disparages a beautiful magical tradition that has a very long, rich, and complicated history. And again, Haiti gets thrown into the mix because they're, first of all, the only example of a successful slave rebellion in the Western world. I think that has just as much to do with Haiti's current situation, the economical situation, how there's so many things that happen to go wrong, how they're so maligned on the world stage, and what constitutes human aid is UN peacekeepers coming and spreading venereal disease and fathering children that they abandon. It's horrible.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I think you're getting at this too, but just how voodoo is viewed. A lot of it's just folk magic, but you see it on television as these crazy practices with dolls, which does happen, but it's that bad people do bad things, but good practitioners do good things. You know what I mean? It's like that everywhere in every religion.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's exactly. I think that when people don't understand things, they're more inclined to fear them. When they're more inclined to fear them, they're more inclined to malign them. And then that just becomes a self-feeding cycle of misunderstanding, fear, and causing more problems for everybody, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my voodoo tales.
I enjoyed them. Thank you very much. So I actually just wanted to talk about this little tidbit last time in Datuba's story, but a proper time didn't come about. But just to talk about familiars. Witches familiars or practitioners familiars in the form of animals. So kind of kindred animal spirits that help you with your magic.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and it's cool because this morning late at night, you were saying it would be fun to look up animal spirits or and ghost pets, that was it. And there's some interesting statistics because near the Spiritualist Movement, there was something like 20,000 people who reported sightings about their ghost pets. So you can take that for what it is. The Spiritualist Movement was kind of Blavatsky's time. So that's, it was of course now I'm having a brain blip. I think 1880 to 1920. Does that sound right?
Yeah, a little further on too, I think.
But you could think of it as people were just more open then, and they didn't call themselves crazy if they saw something, or a mixture of both, But the amount of people went up significantly. It went from, I don't know, the surrounding years were 5,000 people or something to 25,000. Yeah,
there was, what do you call it? The Victorian grotesque resurgence or revival.
Oh, what was that?
Again, roughly the same period, starting about 1840 up into about late 1800s, where people were just far more interested in the occult and the esoteric, and a lot more just open to ideas about ghosts and spirits and table tapping,
right.
seances and all that.
Yes. So I have a kind of hard time with familiars because like it's just really hard for me to conceptualize that like a cat will come to me and they will be this magical being. But I read something that helped me digest it a little bit, and it's kind of like animals that come into your life at a certain time when you might be flourishing magically and learning a lot. Those animals might be there for a reason at that time. And that's, there's nothing too crazy about that. That in itself is magical.
Yeah.
And animals carry magic themselves, like kind of how we discussed last time. So it makes sense. I'm so cold, you guys. This is crazy. I came and I was so hot, and now I'm just freezing.
Yeah, I mean, if we can have serendipitous encounters with humans, why not with other species, right?
Right, yeah. So here are some signs that an animal in your life might be a familiar. So there's heightened activity during your magical practices.
High strangeness.
Right. The animal won't be very afraid of fire or water. So in a cat, that'd be kind of hard, They're terrified of water usually.
I've known one that was just all about it. She was wonderful.
Interesting. Their temperament is quite calm. They seem like they want to offer their services. So they're very involved in you and your magic. Which also, I'm just imagining cats, especially today. I don't know why I'm not really a cat person, but to imagine them being quite altruistic is kind of hard. They're very into themselves usually. You might have some telepathy with them. That makes sense. They'll alert you to if something's wrong with you physically, any health issues.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to credit this person real quick. This is just, I believe, from somebody's blog, Kim. It's a witch's familiar. Is your pet more than just a companion? Yeah. Besides that, I was looking up haunted Edmonton places, and a place that was brought up a few times was our high school, which I won't say the name, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, and somebody actually mentioned the space behind the weight room, which I'd never heard about. But I know you have a story about the hallway. We had this huge arts hallway, and your friend had an experience. I really like that story. I don't know if you'd want to share that real quick. It's okay if you don't. Or maybe you could ask permission another time.
Yeah, I think I'd feel more okay with that.
Perfect. And in just a moment, I just real quick wanted to download a ghost app and just see if anybody here has something to say, respectfully.
Yeah, we're also definitely willing to take suggestions, because we're looking into this whole using a smartphone as a spirit box thing. It seems a little dubious, but why not give it a shot, right?
Yeah.
Shits and giggles, my friends.
So let's just keep it recording for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see how this goes. All right, so we're going for Ghost Box XGBX Paranormal Spirit Box. Install. I'm kind of nervous. I've actually never kind of refused to do this, even though I was really curious. I'll probably delete it right afterwards.
Same for everything, my life.
All right, opening it. Now do we click?
Would any benevolent human dead care to communicate?
ask one more time, would any benevolent human dead care to communicate?
Hi. Who are you?
So your name is Sam? Yeah? And Sam, is there anything you'd like to say?
No.
No? Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good day, Sam.
It's Sam again.
Before we go, is there anybody else that would like to come and say hello? Hello. Who is it this time? Not very helpful if you refer to yourself as me. Do you have a name that I could use?
Ben? Sam? Maybe
Is
it's
that
Sam
Ben?
again.
I'm not sure. This is interesting, but I think I'm gonna have to break this audio down a little later and see if I can get more out of it.
Well, thank you. Take care now. Goodbye.
I'm gonna leave you here.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
There's a woodpecker that's been going nuts during your story and now. Okay, so I'm gonna try this one because it says I tried it. I don't know if I believe it, but I heard pretty creepy things like footsteps. So let's see. I can't imagine hearing footsteps, so I'm going with this one. There's a little baby woodpecker, not baby, but it's a very tiny woodpecker that's been pecking through this show. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Honestly, I kind of think that spirit boxes are sort of like an audio form of parapedalia.
What's that again?
The human instinct to see faces and everything.
Oh, speaking of which, we forgot. So Bash was telling me the story about seeing a face in this graveyard in a tree, I believe.
Yeah, in this one.
Yeah, and then this other woman online, when talking about haunted places in Edmonton, she said, "I walked by and I saw a face in the tree," which is just not what are the chances that people say that about a cemetery? You're the one who bought the Mexican.
Quick shout out to El Mariachi. Great dinner last night. 124th Street. Check him out. Fantastic Mexican food.
My battery is dropping like flies, which is interesting because it usually holds quite a bit. So freezing, number one, which is crazy because we've been out here since it was much colder. And number two, my battery is dropping. I'm going to go for BIP's BCN Spirit Box.
Yep, bipping.
All right. Bip, bippity bop. Beep, beep, boo, bye. There's music on this one. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole time.
So I'm going to press the power button on this app. Hello. Is anyone here to talk to us that is benevolent? What?
Once you made that specification, it went quiet.
Yeah.
What about neutral? Do we have some neutrals that want to say something?
I heard a hi.
Are you really neutral? Am I? I don't know. Honestly, probably not quite. I've got biases. Anyway, if there's something that anybody would like to communicate specifically to us and to our audience, now's a good time.
What was that?
Anyway. How do I get the feeling that you're bored with us? Like we're not asking questions that will allow you to have more fun.
What's your favorite thing to do at the graveyard?
I think one of them said sleep. Maybe. Yes.
No. Hazel. Okay, well, if you have any last messages before we say goodbye. Okay, we might have to try and decipher that later. But it's
much coming through clear, but it's interesting though.
It's been nice talking to you. Hello.
Are you upset that we're going? come back to visit. That make you feel better?
I heard a yes, please, I think.
I heard a yes.
Wow, lots of chatter now. I'm wondering if any of the spirits here sent that woodpecker that's been hanging around us. Okay, well, thanks for talking to us. Goodbye.
Take care.
Take care.
We're gonna leave you here, though.
Thank you. Bye.
Alright.
Well, that's an experience I've never done, and I'm going to promptly delete those from my phone right now. Don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night with anything. I do not welcome that.
Alright, well, this is going to be an interesting one to edit. Damn sure.
Well, this time I definitely will not forget to say where our socials are, and we have a cool kit that we're putting together as a prize if you enter by giving us a positive review. You just need to let us know, and if you want, rate and subscribe. We're just trying to...
Even an honest review, let's be frank.
Okay, I would like a pretty positive review, or else, what's the point, right? Say sandwich it if you need to, right? Positive, negative, positive. We'd really appreciate that, and we'll put you in the draw to receive a magical kit. What are our socials?
All right, so on Twitter we're at _godly-podcast.
At Instagram at un.godly-podcast. Same thing on Facebook.
Yes, that's right. And we're also on SoundCloud. Just soundcloud.com/UnGodly-Podcast. I have a lot more work to do on that one, so maybe just visit the other ones. Or also just check us out at UnGodly-Podcast.transistor.fm.
Thank you. Have a good time. Goodbye.